think this is the moment that she has finally realized everything's gone wrong.
The moment Oprah Winfrey looked Meghan Markle dead in the eye and said no, everything changed forever. This wasn't just another celebrity rejection, this was the final nail in a coffin that had been building for years. You see, when the most powerful woman in media walks away from a guaranteed moneymaker, she knows something the rest of us don't. And what happened next? A complete Hollywood exodus that left Meghan scrambling to save face while her entire empire crumbled around her.
Markle doesn't have friends. She doesn't do friends. She does business contacts. That's why she had no one at her wedding.
Kim Kardashian suddenly went radio silent. Netflix slashed their deal to almost nothing. Staff members started whispering about a dictator in high heels. Even Prince Harry's own charity, his mother's legacy, began falling apart. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. This rejection wasn't random. Oprah had inside information that would shock you, and by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why even she couldn't risk being associated with what was coming.
From what I'm told, Meghan Markle has been going through multiple stages of grief over the Netflix deal. It started with denial. It moved to desperation to change the situation with Ted Sarandos. Then it was anger, and we know what she gets like when she's mad. And now it is complete devastation.
Let me paint you a picture of how confident Meghan was walking into that meeting. This woman had just pulled off one of the most watched interviews in television history, had millions hanging on her every word, and genuinely believed she was untouchable. She strutted into Oprah's Montecito mansion thinking this was just a formality. After all, who says no to easy money and guaranteed ratings?
Folk when she no longer needs to get something from them. So yes, absolutely, the likes of Serena Williams were not friends. Oprah was never friends. Gayle King, they were never friends. These are contacts, and they are contacts to further the career of Meghan.
But here's what nobody knew at the time. Oprah had been getting calls, not just from random sources, but from people with serious power in Hollywood. The kind of people who can make or break careers with a single phone call. They weren't telling her to reject Meghan outright, they were much smarter than that. They were sharing information. Little pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture Oprah didn't want to be part of. So when Meghan pitched her grand vision, her lifestyle empire, her charitable initiatives, her plans to revolutionize media, Oprah listened politely. She nodded in all the right places. She even asked follow-up questions. But behind those eyes that had launched 1,000 careers, calculations were happening. Risk versus reward. Legacy versus short-term profit. And for the first time in decades, Oprah Winfrey looked at guaranteed success and said absolutely not. The rejection wasn't harsh. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse, it was clinical, professional. The kind of dismissal that makes you realize you've fundamentally misunderstood your position in the game. And when Meghan left that meeting, something inside her broke. Because if Oprah Winfrey, the woman who had single-handedly rescued her reputation, was walking away, what did that say about what was coming next? Within 48 hours of that meeting, something absolutely wild started happening across Hollywood. Kim Kardashian, who had been publicly supportive and even hinted at potential collaborations, suddenly went completely silent. Not just quiet, radio dead. No more supportive comments, no more public appearances together, nothing. Her team started giving vague responses about scheduling conflicts whenever Meghan's name came up. But Kim was just the beginning. One by one, A-listers who had previously been friendly started pulling back. Jennifer Aniston stopped responding to texts. Ellen DeGeneres, who had defended her during the racism allegations, suddenly had nothing to say. Even Serena Williams, supposedly one of her closest friends, began keeping their interactions strictly private. It was like watching a carefully orchestrated retreat, and nobody was talking about why. Thing is, Hollywood operates on whisper networks. Information doesn't travel through official channels, it moves through assistants, agents, and power lunches. And something was spreading through those networks faster than wildfire. sources started revealing that major agencies were quietly advising their clients to maintain distance. Not because of anything Meghan had done publicly, but because of what insiders knew was coming. The most telling sign? Invitations stopped arriving. Award shows, charity galas, industry events, suddenly Meghan and Harry were persona non grata. The same events that had rolled out red carpets just months earlier were now claiming guest lists were finalized or budgets were tight. When you've been blacklisted in Hollywood, they don't tell you directly. They just make you invisible. And here's the kicker, none of this was random. These weren't individual decisions by scared celebrities. This was coordinated damage control by people who had seen the writing on the wall. They knew what Oprah knew, and they were getting out before the storm hit. But what exactly were they all running from? That's where things get really disturbing. So let's talk about what really happened behind those boardroom doors at Netflix. Remember when Meghan and Harry first signed that massive $100 million deal back in 2020? Everyone was talking about how they'd conquered Hollywood, how they'd shown the royal family who was really in charge. Well, fast forward to August 2025, and reality just came crashing down like a house of cards. Netflix didn't just renew their deal, they completely gutted it. What was once an exclusive, bank-breaking partnership worth 9 figures became what they're politely calling a first-look agreement. But here's what that really means. Netflix went from throwing money at them to basically saying, "We'll look at your stuff first, but we're not promising anything." It's like going from being someone's guaranteed number one to maybe getting a text back if they're bored. Netflix didn't just renew their deal, they completely gutted it. What was once an exclusive, bank-breaking partnership worth 9 figures became what they're politely calling a first-look agreement. But here's what that really means. Netflix went from throwing money at them to basically saying, "We'll look at your stuff first, but we're not promising anything." It's like going from being someone's guaranteed number one to maybe getting a text back if they're bored. The humiliation doesn't stop there. Sources inside Netflix are calling this new arrangement a scaled-back version of their original deal. Translation? They're getting pennies compared to what they used to make. The streaming giant that once saw them as golden content creators now treats them like any other production company begging for scraps. And here's the kicker, they lost their exclusivity completely. Netflix can now pass on their projects, and Meghan and Harry have to shop around like everyone else. But the most brutal part? This downgrade puts them in the exact same category as Barack and Michelle Obama's production company. Think about that for a second. The former president and first lady of the United States got the same treatment. Even Netflix's chief content officer's statement was basically corporate speak for, "Their numbers haven't been great, but we'll give them one more shot." What's really happening here is Netflix doing damage control on a massive investment that didn't pay off. Sure, Harry and Meghan got views initially, but everything since then has been disappointing. Polo flopped harder than anyone expected, and with Love, Meghan barely registered on anyone's radar despite Netflix desperately trying to spin it as their most-watched culinary show. When you're celebrating being the best cooking show on a platform that barely has cooking shows, you know you're in trouble. And the timeline? Suspicious as hell. Their original deal was supposed to run until September 2025, but Netflix rushed to announce this renewal in August. Why the urgency? Because they needed to control the narrative before word leaked that they were basically firing their most expensive talent and replacing them with intern-level contracts. This wasn't an extension, it was Netflix publicly humiliating them while pretending to be generous. Now here's where things get absolutely insane. While Netflix was quietly downgrading their deal, something even more damaging was happening behind the scenes. Staff members, people who had signed NDAs, people who were supposed to be loyal started walking out the door. And they weren't just leaving quietly. They were talking. The phrase "dictator in high heels" didn't come from some random tabloid. It came from someone who worked directly with Meghan, someone who witnessed her behavior firsthand. Think about how bad things have to get for employees to risk legal action just to warn others about what they experienced. We're talking about people throwing away their careers and potentially facing lawsuits just to speak their truth. But here's what's really disturbing: the pattern. 18 staff members have quit since they left the royal family. 18. That's not normal turnover, that's a mass exodus. And it's not just low-level employees either. We're talking about senior advisors, communications directors, people who were handpicked for their expertise and discretion. When your inner circle keeps abandoning ship, there's only one common denominator. The latest reports are absolutely brutal. Former staff members are describing an environment where temper tantrums were daily occurrences, where impossible demands were made and then blame was shifted when they couldn't be met. One insider revealed that Meghan would send emails at 5 a.m. demanding immediate responses, then berate staff for not being available 24/7. Another described being screamed at for suggesting alternative approaches to problems. What makes this even more damaging is the timing. Right as Hollywood was pulling back, right as Netflix was reconsidering their investment, stories about Meghan's behavior were spreading through the exact networks that could make or break their future. Entertainment industry assistants talk to each other. They compare notes. And when multiple people from the same organization start sharing horror stories, word travels fast. The most telling detail? Several staff members specifically mentioned that working for Meghan was worse than working for notoriously difficult celebrities they'd previously served. When you're being compared unfavorably to people known for being impossible to work with, you've crossed a line that's hard to come back from. And in an industry built on relationships and reputation, that kind of damage spreads like poison through everything you touch. But losing staff was just the beginning of their problems. Because while Meghan was burning bridges with employees, Harry was watching something even more precious slip away, something that connected him directly to his mother's memory. But here's where things get absolutely heartbreaking for Harry. While Meghan was burning through staff and Netflix was slashing their deals, something even more devastating was happening. The one thing that connected him directly to his mother's memory, his charity centerbail, was falling apart. And according to multiple sources, Meghan was right at the center of why it all went wrong. In March 2025, Harry did something unthinkable. He resigned from Centerbail, the charity he co-founded almost 20 years ago to honor Princess Diana. This wasn't just any charity, this was his baby, his connection to his mother's legacy, the one thing he'd built that actually mattered. The whole mess started at a polo match in April 2024, when Meghan showed up unannounced and asked Dr. Sophie Shendoka, the charity's chairwoman, to move during a trophy ceremony so she could stand next to Harry for photos. That one moment, caught on camera and going viral, exposed something much darker underneath. Within months, the entire charity was in crisis. Dr. Shendoka accused Harry of bullying and harassment. The entire board resigned in solidarity against her. Charity that had raised millions for vulnerable children in Africa was suddenly hemorrhaging money and reputation. Sources say this decision devastated Harry, who had poured his heart into building something that would make Diana proud. While Harry was losing his mother's legacy, Meghan was facing her own spectacular failures that would crush their financial situation even further. Remember As Ever, her lifestyle brand that was supposed to be the next Goop? Well, launching a luxury company while hemorrhaging staff and losing Hollywood support isn't exactly a recipe for success. Trademark troubles alone were a massive red flag. Meghan filed for As Ever in March 2024, thinking she could dominate the lifestyle market. But trademark applications don't guarantee approval, especially for something as generic as Ever, covering everything from clothing to wellness products. The real disaster was execution. Sources reveal Meghan micromanaged every detail while dealing with impossible demands and daily meltdowns from those staff members who kept quitting. You can't build a successful company when your workforce is in constant survival mode. The Spotify collapse should have been their wake-up call. That podcast deal was worth millions, and they produced exactly one season before Spotify basically fired them. The executive called them grifters, not exactly the endorsement you want when convincing other companies to invest. They're launching luxury products during a cost-of-living crisis, trying to sell overpriced wellness nonsense while their reputation is in free fall. Netflix downgraded their deal to nothing. Spotify cut them loose. The financial pressure is absolutely crushing them, and every business venture becomes a public relations nightmare. But here's where things get absolutely insane. Conspiracy theories are tearing apart their credibility from the inside out. While Meghan's brand empire crumbled and Harry lost his mother's legacy, rumors exploded that make everything else look like child's play. And these weren't coming from random internet trolls, they were coming from inside their own family. The surrogacy allegations reached a breaking point in early 2025 when Buckingham Palace reportedly pressured them to remove Archie and Lilibet from the royal line of succession until Meghan provides absolute proof she physically gave birth to them. Think about how devastating that is, having your own children's legitimacy questioned by the institution you once belonged to. Meghan's own half-sister Samantha and estranged father Thomas are fueling these rumors. Samantha revealed that Thomas told her 9 months before Archie was born that Meghan had picked up her frozen eggs and suggested a surrogate was involved. When your own family members are publicly questioning whether you carried your children, that's a credibility crisis that cuts deeper than any business failure. The details keep adding fuel to the fire. Archie was born 20 miles from their residence despite planning a home birth. Palace announced labor 7 hours after delivery. Harry claimed they were home 2 hours after birth, something critics say is only possible without physical delivery. Even their defenders are cracking. When your closest allies have to publicly defend you against allegations from your own family members, you've lost control of the narrative completely. Palace reportedly demanding irrefutable proof shows how seriously this constitutional crisis is being taken behind closed doors.